Hello, and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I have been studying relationships for over 20 years as a couples therapist, a professor, an award-winning author, and as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Now, I'm inviting you into this space each week as I dig into some of the toughest and most fascinating relational dilemmas of our time. If you want to discover how to create vibrant and loving relationships in your own life, you have come to the right place. This is Reimagining Love. Hi there, and welcome back to Reimagining Love. I am so glad that you joined me for today's conversation. As we get started, I'm curious, what prompted you to tune in to today's episode? Perhaps you are just a regular weekly listener of the show and you always tune in on Tuesdays. Hey, love to have you here. Perhaps you saw the title of the episode and your stomach did like a little flip and you felt maybe a little bit called out. Perhaps you and your partner have been arguing about your jobs and how you prioritize things differently. Maybe you worry your equally ambitious careers are going to drive the two of you apart. Maybe this is a topic that was fraught in a past relationship of yours. Or maybe you just want confirmation that you're doing work and relationships in all of the right ways. Whatever your reason is for tuning in today, think about it for just a moment. And just know, this episode is going to offer you some reframes and some tools to shift your mindset from one of fear and frustration to one of openness, curiosity, and clarity when it comes to navigating work and love. There's so much possibility, even if you and or your partner are feeling rather stuck right now. I have been spending a lot of nerdy brain time hanging out at the intersection of ambition and intimacy. I think there are a lot of important and interesting and unanswered questions about how to help couples create wonderful careers and thriving intimate partnerships. So I've been developing clinical trainings for couple therapists. I've been offering workshops for couples. I've been doing some media work on this topic on podcasts and with journalists, which means that I have a lot to say, like way more to say than can reasonably fit in one little old episode of Reimagining Love. So this today is going to be a little taster, an amuse-bouche, if you will. And you can rest assured that we will circle back to this topic in future episodes. And I would love for you to send me DMs and emails with your thoughts and your feedback and with what variations on these themes you are finding yourself needing or wanting me to explore next. So let's be in this together. What are we going to cover today? Well, today I'm going to start by telling you why I think it's so incredibly important for us to talk about the clashes that arise between your work life and your love life. And then I'm going to talk about what I call the work-love matrix that actually exists within every couple's relationship. And when it's ignored or misunderstood, the work-love matrix has the power to wreak havoc on a couple's dynamic, fueling disconnection, competition, and contempt. But when it's understood and acknowledged, the work-love matrix becomes a source of relational support and affirmation and grace. And finally, we will explore how our work stress usually contains echoes of what we experienced in our family of origin and why it's crucial for us to understand that connection and also for our partners to understand this connection as well. So today's episode is called, Can You Have an Amazing Career and an Amazing Relationship? And my spoiler alert for you is that I believe, hell yes, you can. But that's if and only if You bring relational self-awareness to the deep and poignant dynamics that get activated inside of each of you and in the space between the two of you when it comes to your work life and your love life. So, therefore, throughout the episode, I will share questions and practices that are going to promote relational self awareness and serve as conversation starters for you and your partner as you navigate through this journey. Okay, so let's dive in. As you may already know, I am often invited to speak about relationships in front of audiences, whether it's employees of large companies or attendees at conferences and retreats or rooms full of therapists. And in recent years, one of the focuses of my talks has been sharing research and experience helping couples navigate relationship dynamics and career pressures. And that's partly because I am frequently talking to ambitious and high achieving people who are working through this topic in their relationships. But it's also because I firmly believe that we all need to be talking about this fascinating intersection of work and love. And here's why. First of all, work and love are both important. It was the founding father, Sigmund Freud, who said, love and work are the cornerstones of our humanness. Also, work is huge, especially here in the US. Research has found that 1/6 of our waking life is spent working. So, being able to feel competent and well in our work dynamics is vital to our overall health and well being, and therefore our relational health. Another one is this quote that I love from Annie Dillard, who's a novelist. She says, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. And we spend an awful lot of our lives working. And then also, the rise in dual career households means that traditional solutions to problems related to work life integration are simply not available for many or most couples today. Questions like, do we move for my job or stay put for your job? Which one of us leaves work to take care of the sick kid? Which one of us offers emotional support to the other at the end of a long day? Historically, she accommodated him. And I say she and he on purpose because historically, cis hetero partnerships were the only ones that were seen as legitimate. And queer couples, by definition, can't fall back on traditional solutions. And today, most cis hetero couples do not want to fall back on traditional solutions because they want to cultivate a relational ethic that values both of their career trajectories. And or they cannot fall back on traditional solutions because in 50% of straight marriages, she out earns him anyway. So her paycheck is as important, if not more important, as his. So, all of which means that couples cannot turn to gender norms to resolve tensions that arise between the needs of the couple and the needs of the workplace. And that's obviously great news because when we use gender norms to solve problems, we're all relegated to half human status, right? Men feel valuable and valued only for the money they provide, and women feel valuable and valued only for the care they provide. Like, yawn, boring, been there, done that. But when the rules and the roles were obvious in that way, then couples didn't have to expend emotional energy processing feelings and finding creative solutions. And today, the rules and the roles are not obvious. So couples need to expend that emotional energy. They need to be collaborative. They need to be communicative. They need to be caring in order to navigate the inevitable tension between work and home and to find ways through that leave both people feeling seen and heard and appreciated. So, therefore, all of that is to say, this topic is really important. It's also the case that all of us are at our best when we have the ability to pursue both our desire to be ambitious and our desire to be connected. That's the best case scenario for all of us. Ideally, your intimate relationship is a secure base from which you can take career risks. You are braver and bolder at work because of how loved and seen and supported you feel at home. And alongside that, your intimate relationship is ideally a safe haven, one that provides you with empathy and comfort when you inevitably experience pain and embarrassment in the face of career stumbles or mishaps or disappointment at work. When partners feel individual agency at work, they can more effectively address relationship problems at home. So it's like we can leverage career success to feel effective and powerful and competent. And that has payoff at home because we can bring those feelings of competence home with us and be like, okay, if I solve the problem at work, I can show up for my partner and probably be pretty effective in this relationship as well. It's also the case that career wins like raises and promotions and benefits support both partners, right? So ideally, everyone's rowing in the same direction. What's good for me at work is good for my relationship. My career win has payoff both in terms of my own self-esteem, my own paycheck, my own drive and ambition, as well as benefit to my partner. And finally, when work and love are aligned, your career wins are multiplied by the power of two, as the Indigo Girls would say, because you are celebrating your career wins and your partner is right there next to you celebrating your career wins, right? So when we can get this right, when work and love are as aligned as they can be, there's so much benefit and so much payoff for both of us in both of these domains. But the unfortunate reality is that work and love tend to collide. And when they do, it makes it harder to thrive at work and it makes it harder to connect with our partners. In fact, couples often fight about work. Work stress comes home. We did a whole episode about that, and we've got it linked in the show notes if you need to go back and listen to that one. Because what all the research shows us is that the boundary between work and home is paper thin. Research has found that relational stress compromises our ability to work. So, stress at home travels with us to the office and affects our ability to work. And stress at work travels home with us. When we are overwhelmed at work, when we're burned out at work, we experience more relationship conflict. And in 2023, Forbes surveyed people who were divorced and asked them about the most common types of conflict. And the number one conflict that divorced couples reported having experienced in their marriage was about career choices. Career choices were the number one, even when compared to things like parenting differences, division of household labor, relationship with family, relationship with friends, finances, health choices. So it's big, and we need and deserve tools to get it right. Here's what I know for sure. Conversations between you and your partner about work, about your career, about ambition, about stress, they're not just about that content. That's what's on the surface, but the roots run really deep. So I want to offer you a way of looking at the tension between ambition and intimacy that's designed to help you have more productive, more impactful, more curious conversations with your partner when you're struggling with your own job or when you're struggling with feelings about your partner's job. I want to introduce you to the work-love matrix. You and your partner are not just on a little island together, as much as that might sound kind of romantic and kind of cozy. Your relationship is embedded in an entire network of additional relationships. Your couple relationship is shaping and it's shaped by the relational tapestry in which you are embedded. And I'm calling this the work love matrix. There are four relationships that impact the quality of the connection between you and your partner. But there are 4 relationships that are easily overlooked and minimized. And here they are. Relationship number 1 is the relationship that you have with your job. Number 2 is the relationship that your partner has with their job. Number 3 is the relationship that you have with your partner's job. And number 4 is the relationship your partner has with your job. So think about you, your partner, your job, your partner's job, and there's arrows going in all of those directions. Those are 4 separate but connected relationships. So when you hear me name those relationships in the work-love matrix, what comes up for you? Have you ever thought about it in this way? You likely have thought about your relationship with your job, but how much have you thought about your relationship with your partner's job? That's different than your relationship with your partner, right? Your partner is not their job. So you have this distinct relationship with your partner's job. How has that relationship between yourself and your partner's job, how has it changed over time, or how has it not changed? What are the primary emotions that come up for you about your partner's job? Pride, resentment, indifference, jealousy, comfort? Are there ways in which you derive your own sense of self-worth in part through your relationship with your partner's job? You might be thinking, okay, Alexandra, what do you mean I have a relationship with my partner's job? Like, yes, I know that my partner has a job. I know there are issues at work. I know sometimes, the names of their coworkers, but I'm not there with my partner at their job. And that's right. But I would argue that yes, you absolutely have a relationship with your partner's job. In the space between you and that job, there's room for you to experience all sorts of feelings, hopes, expectations, grievances, just like there's space between you and any other person that you're in a relationship with. And your relationship with your partner's job might evolve. It might feel different depending on the season. It might become more or less tense, but it's a relationship. And I'm inviting and challenging you to become aware of the quality of that relationship, because the quality of the relationship between you and your partner's job shapes the quality of the relationship between you and your partner. And when we frame it this way, you are also invited and challenged to look at the role that you play in shaping that space, the mindset that you bring to that relationship. What impact do your feelings about your partner's job have on the relationship between you and your partner? And you can do the very same thought exercise vis-a-vis your partner's feelings about your job. What's it like for you to think about that? What's it like for you to consider how your partner feels about the work that you do? If you sense that your partner feels envious about your work, what's that like for you? If you sense that your partner views your job as a threat to connection, what's that like for you? What do you tend to do in the face of your partner's snippy comment about your work? Do you get defensive? Do you rationalize? Do you explain? Do you poo-poo them? If your partner uses your work as a point of bragging to other people, what's that like for you? Do you feel proud? Or does it maybe stir up some uncomfortable feelings, like they're putting you on a pedestal, or they're kind of like borrowing something that's yours and, holding it up as if it's theirs? Does that feel like a redo of something perhaps that you experienced when you were growing up? Years ago, I was the principal investigator on a research project where we were looking at family business founders, and we were looking at the tensions and problems that came up for them around succession planning. And in all but one of these cases, the founders were male, by the way. And one of the big themes that we found in these interviews was that very often the founder talked about his relationship with his work as if he was talking about his relationship with an affair partner. These guys would say things like, well, I sneak off to my office so my wife doesn't get mad. Or my wife says I love my job more than I love her. Or my wife gets really jealous about how passionate I feel about my work. It was like this triangle. We would like talk about this triangle between the founder's spouse, and the work, the business. And there were all kinds of tensions and possessiveness and secrecy and envy and control that were happening in that triangular relationship. And that example is particularly poignant. We know that when we're talking about family business founders, there tends to be quite a bit of merger between the business and the founder's sense of themselves. So that's a poignant example. But I would encourage you to consider what variations on those themes are present in your relationship. So consider that work-love matrix in your relationship. The dynamics for you might be more subtle. And by the way, they might not be negative, but they're worth you understanding because the quality of those relationships shapes how each of you talks, not only about your own jobs, but about your partner's job. So, in order to help you really land this, I want to give you a chance right now to practice some relational self awareness. I'm going to read you 10 prompts. These are like little sentence completions, and they're designed to help you consider the quality of the relationships in your work love matrix. And so these prompts are going to help you figure out which of the relationships are strained, which ones are easeful. These prompts are going to highlight where it feels like there are breakdowns in empathy or understanding or support, where you might be finding some feelings of competition or comparison, and where the dynamics are feeling pretty darn good. So as I read you the 10 prompts, you can write the prompts down now and you can fill them in later, or you can just pause as we go and write your responses along the way. After I give you these 10 prompts, I'm going to give you some instructions about where to go from here. Sound good? Here we go. Number one, what I am most liking about my work these days is dot, dot, dot. Number two, what I am struggling with most regarding my work these days is dot, dot, dot. Number three, what I wish my partner would better understand about my work is dot, dot, dot. Number four, my partner could better support me vis-a-vis my work by dot, dot, dot. Number five, one way I would like to grow or evolve in my work is dot, dot, dot. Number six, what I like, respect, admire most about my partner's work is dot, dot, dot. Number seven, what I'm struggling most with regarding my partner's work is dot, dot, dot. Number eight, what I probably need to better understand about my partner's work is dot, dot, dot. Number nine, something I need to better understand about my partner's vision for their work is dot, dot, dot. And finally, number 10, I think I could better support my partner vis-a-vis their work by dot, dot, dot. Okay, next steps. Ideally, you have, or you soon will have, journaled your responses to each of these prompts. And then, if we're continuing in my ideal scenario, your partner is also going to journal their responses to these prompts. And then, ideally, you and your partner are going to talk through each of your responses, and you will listen to your partner with curiosity, and they will listen to you with curiosity. And rather than debating each other's responses, just view them as sacred windows into each other's world. These are just a chance for you to learn something new about them and for them to learn something new about you. And for each of you, frankly, to learn something new about yourselves. I hope that these prompts are illuminating for you about maybe some connections that were hanging out in the corners of your awareness, but now are becoming more clear. So you're developing self-awareness, you're sharing that with your partner, you're listening to them about what they're starting to understand or see differently for themselves. And this sets the two of you up to explore this intersection of ambition and intimacy that is affecting each of you, but not affecting each of you in the same way. So be curious about what's similar, be curious about what's different, and be guided by the idea that there are no rights or wrongs here. Okay, and then what? Well, as John Gottman's research tells us, a full 69% of the stuff that we get into conflict about in our relationships is actually not solvable. So the bad news is there's a pretty good chance there's not going to be a fix for you guys. The fix is more empathy, more grace, more patience, more curiosity, letting go of the idea that one of you is doing it right and one of you is doing it wrong. So once you've done your own reflection and conversation, you can close by checking in with yourself. Okay, what insights did you glean from this process about yourself and about your partner? And what's something that you can do starting this week that lets you relate even just a little tiny bit, even 1 degree differently to your own work and to your partner's work. And then try that 1 degree tweak. See what happens. See what happens inside of you. See what happens in terms of the conversations that you and your partner have. Okay, let's keep going because I want to dig in even a little bit deeper. So, if you want to have a kick ass career and a thriving intimate relationship, you need to understand what makes you tick. Otherwise, you're going to get tripped up by work stress and you're going to get defensive about your partner's feelings about your job. So, you know how companies sometimes have take your daughter to work day or take your kid to work day? What I've started saying lately is that, in fact, every single day is take your inner child to work day. Your work is not just about your title, your hours, your paycheck. Your work has the power to activate your old pain. When you are stressed about work, there is surely part of it that has to do with your demanding boss or your underfunctioning team member. But I want to push you to consider this. The way that you, in particular, respond to your demanding boss and your underfunctioning team member is deeply and maybe unconsciously shaped by the experiences that you had in your family of origin. Why? Well, a family is a system. Okay, what is a system? A system is a group of interrelated elements that act according to a set of rules to form a unified whole. Okay, a family is a system. A family is made up of kids, siblings, parents, spouses, sometimes grandparents, all of whom are in relation to each other with roles, responsibilities, expectations, and experiences of self and other, forming a unified whole, the family. Okay, well, guess what else is a system? Your workplace. Your workplace is made up of bosses and supervisors and directors and leaders and workers and colleagues and supervisees and direct reports, all of whom are in relation to each other with roles, responsibilities, expectations, and experiences of self and other forming a whole, which is the workplace. So there are powerful parallels between your experiences in your family of origin and your experiences at work. And your family of origin experiences become the pair of glasses through which you experience your workplace dynamics. You don't see your dynamics at work with crystal clear vision. None of us do. Our vision is shaped by our past. You are primed to be extra sensitive to some dynamics at work, and you are primed to not even notice other dynamics. You come into work with a set of expectations that are shaped by your early experiences. We all come into our workplaces with a set of expectations that were formed in our first system, our family system. That means that you take your inner child, your young self, to work with you every day. We all do that. The longings you felt in your family growing up, the parts of you that were desperate to be validated, the sensitivities that you carried, everywhere you go, there you are. So let's break this down. I'm going to talk about your relationship with particular people at work, how that parallels relationships from the past, how that holds the power to awaken dynamics around some particular things, and then the central questions. So let's talk first about bosses and supervisors. So your relationship with your boss or your supervisor parallels your relationship with your early attachment figures, i.e., your parents. The relationship with your boss or supervisor, therefore, holds the power to awaken dynamics around power, control, agency, surrender, and the central questions that you are bringing into your relationship with your boss or your supervisor include the following. Can I report to you without being mistreated by you? How do I tolerate your disappointment and frustration in me? What does your praise or approval mean to me? What's it like for me to trust your leadership? To what degree do I feel safe to speak up if and when I disagree with your approach? Those are all old questions that you had vis-a-vis your parents. And now those are all questions that you bring into the dynamics with your boss or your supervisor. Let's do coworkers next. Your relationship with your coworkers, I would argue, parallels your relationship with your siblings, with your cousins, with your peers when you were growing up. And therefore, the relationship with your coworkers holds the power to awaken dynamics around competition for resources, attention, and differentiation. So, central questions that you bring into colleague dynamics, coworker dynamics, include the following. Can we be both connected to each other and competitive with each other? Can I be seen as my unique self, or am I just seen in relation to you? And then finally, your relationship with employees or supervisees, if you have those. I would argue that those relationships, the relationships with the people who report to you, parallel your relationships with your younger siblings, if you were an older sib, but more deeply and perhaps more poignantly, your relationship with the people who report to you will awaken the fears that you have about becoming the parent or the powerful one in the system. And when you were little, if you were raised by people who did not handle their power well, who were in a position of power, if your parents were in a position of power, obviously, and if your parents were neglectful, if your parents were mercurial, if your parents were, God forbid, abusive, then as you step into a position of power in your workplace, what comes with you into your new title, your position of power, is fear that you also will misuse your power, that you will be experienced by the people who report to you as mercurial, unreliable, neglectful, abusive. Right? So there's this entire thing that happens when you become powerful that means that you now reckon with what it's like to hold power in a system. And if your experience was that people who held power in your first system, i.e., your family system, if they didn't use that power well, you are going to be concerned about your ability to use that power well. So, what comes up for you around being a boss, a supervisor, an employer are issues around dependence. What's it like to have people depending on you? Caregiving, safety, allocation of resources, fairness, all of that. So, the central questions here are, can I tolerate the fact that my praise or my disapproval has the power to impact you? Right? Like when you are in charge at work, you are seen. You are deeply seen. And if you grew up not being seen, that's going to feel really confronting. Can I hold my power and use it well? Can I be competent, but also vulnerable and authentic? Can I succeed without it being hurtful to others? Okay, there's a lot there. There's a lot there. So, what do we do with this? Well, first, you just let it sink in. You just start to like bring those two worlds together, the world of your family of origin and the world of your workplace. If this is new for you to look at it this way, just go slow. Like take a little nibble and just work with it slowly. You've got this here with you now. For the rest of your life, you can start to map the old stuff onto the current stuff. So just hold on to that idea about these parallels. If you already know your family of origin role because you've been with us here on Reimagining Love for a while, you've taken the quiz, you can start to map your family of origin role onto your workplace. How does the role that you played in your family of origin shape the role that you play at work with authority figures, with coworkers, with your supervisees? And then how does your family of origin role also shape how you talk about your work stuff with your intimate partner? So, what's the point in making these connections between then and now? This is far from just an intriguing intellectual exercise. The goal is to get unhooked from the past and to give yourself the opportunity to respond mindfully in the present moment rather than react automatically from past patterns. So let's talk through 5 steps. These are the 5 steps you're going to take around the interface between family of origin stuff and workplace stuff. So, step 1, notice when you're feeling activated by a moment at work. That's the first step. Just start to notice when you go from calm to activated. And the point of the noticing is so that you can check in with yourself. And you can check in about the degree to which your reaction in the present moment is shaped or informed by family of origin dynamics. And if that is the case, if you think that the size of your reaction is perhaps a little bit bigger, a little more intense because of stuff you endured when you were little, then step 2 is to affirm the heck out of your inner child, out of your little self. Affirm that little self and tell that little self that actually you, little one, do not need to get involved because that's what's going to happen. Our little selves are going to take over unless they are explicitly and gently and firmly told, this is not your business. This is grown folk business. And in fact, me, empowered adult me, has everything I need to handle this moment at work. Step 2 is about consciously disentangling so that because little self is only going to react from that young place and try to get control or try to run and hide or try to disappear, right? That's all little self can do. Little selves don't know how to do empowered, grounded responses. You start by affirming little self so you can move on to step 3. And step 3 allows you to meet this moment at work on today's terms from a place that is grounded, open-hearted, and relational versus urgent, reactive, defensive. Because when you do that, you do two things at once. You offer healing to your little self, and you create the possibility of an outcome that is different from the outcome you got as a kid. You create for yourself what therapists call a corrective emotional experience. So if your usual go-to would be you pop off because you grew up as a rebel and so your response to any source of threat or tension is to get argumentative and point out what everyone's doing wrong. If you handle this moment differently, then the system is going to respond differently. So you create a new possibility for yourself. Step 4 is you celebrate the hell out of yourself when you do it differently, even if you do it 1 degree differently, because 1 degree matters. 1 degree of shaping a pattern is breaking a pattern. It's progress, it's growth, it's healing, it's liberation. And I don't care what your celebration looks like. It could be a happy dance, it could be giving yourself a hug, it could be letting yourself have a little cry, it could be phoning a friend, whatever, doesn't matter. It could be a sweet treat. It doesn't matter what it is. But I just want you to take a moment and land that shift, notice that you have done something differently. It's a very big deal. And step 5 is to talk to your partner about all of this. I think so often in our relationships, we kind of get stuck having the same old conversation with our partner about the same cast of characters and the same complaints. So when you do these steps and handle a moment differently from a place of greater awareness and empowerment, talk to your partner about it. We know that the strongest intimate relationships are the ones in which partners can be open about the impact of their respective pasts and can offer each other witnessing, support, and validation, not just of the old pain, but also of the new possibilities. So let me talk you through an example of what this might look like in action. Let's imagine that you grew up as a peacemaker in your family of origin, meaning that you stepped in every time there was tension between two siblings, between a parent and a sibling, between your parents. You stepped in and you tried to help both sides understand each other. When you were growing up, you had no boundary between what was other people's stuff and what was your stuff. Everyone's drama was your drama. So you were a peacemaker in your family of origin. And now at work, you have a coworker who's upset because they feel like the boss is not giving her credit for a project that she handled really well. Okay, so step 1 is noticing how you're feeling. You are feeling so furious and you're feeling so protective of your coworker. And so you notice the intensity of your feelings and you are noticing the urgency you feel around wanting to confront your boss, and you are scratching your head and you're like, I think this may be not just about what's happening now, but I think this may also be fueled by some stuff from my past. So you go on to step 2 and you affirm that little peacemaker self of yours. You affirm that it's so beautiful that this young version of yourself would put their body on the line and would try so hard to get everyone to get involved. And you tell your little self, baby girl, you do not need to get involved. I'm going to handle it. As an empowered adult self, I'm going to handle this moment. Okay, now step 3. This is your corrective emotional experience. The thing that you want to do, your go-to, the easy thing, is to call your boss or email your boss and defend your coworker and figure out what's it going to take for the boss to make it right with the coworker. And you notice this urge and you check in with yourself and you say, okay, how can I do it differently? What could I do that's different? Well, instead of going to your boss, you go to your coworker. And instead of talking to your coworker about how you can make it right, you instead ask your coworker questions like, what do you think your next step needs to be? Right? Instead of fixing, you empower. You slow down and you empower your coworker to help them to support them, figuring out what they want to do next. And then step 4 is you celebrate the hell out of yourself because you did it differently. You are giving your coworker space to advocate for herself. And even though there's a part of you that is very convinced that you're abandoning your coworker during their time of need, you affirm yourself that you are actually empowering your coworker to have their own experience. You are staying in your lane, and that is growth and liberation for you. And you affirm to yourself that you're healing an old part of yourself. Maybe you give yourself a little squeeze, you get yourself a little afternoon snack, whatever it is, but you make sure that you really notice and land, oh my gosh, I did this differently. And then step 5 is you talk to your partner about this. And hopefully your partner expresses empathy and says to you, it must have been so hard for you to keep quiet. I know your knee-jerk move is to stick up for and defend other people. So by talking to your partner about it, you give them a chance to hear you differently, to bear witness to your growth and your progress. Okay, that brings us to the end of our episode. As you heard today, the intersection between your love life and your work life, between intimacy and ambition, is chock full of important and impactful relationship dynamics. So I hope this episode has invited you to take this intersection seriously in your own life and to feel hopeful about the power you have to evolve the dynamics there. This week, try to keep that work-love matrix in mind as you discuss work with your partner. See what comes up for you without judgment as you consider your orientation towards your partner's job and theirs towards your job. See what happens as you move through your workspace with an eye toward wondering how your reactions and observations to the people around you may tie to early experiences that you had in your original system, your family system. So I'm going to be continuing to explore this topic here on Reimagining Love, so make sure you're following the show wherever you get your podcasts so that you're in the loop when we share more conversations like this one. And as always, leave a review. Leave an Apple Podcast review, share your feedback. Let me know what you think of this one. And until next time, be well. Thank you for listening to our show. Our producers are Elizabeth Vogt and Mary Chan and Katie Pagich of Organized Sound Productions. Our theme music was composed by Slade Warnkin. The show is executive produced by me, Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening, and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.